Welcome to the Worth Knowing live stream on the Cliff's Edge channel on YouTube. We are on the Politics of New Hampshire Substack, Steve Marshand's Substack, and we're on Twitch, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on LinkedIn. I'm Matt Robeson, and we've got a fascinating mixture today of audiences, some coming to us from following the Cliff's Edge YouTube channel or Cliff Schechter on Twitter or Facebook or Twitch, some coming to us because they follow me on my Substack, Worth Knowing, and some joining from Steve Marshand's Substack. So, for those of you joining from Steve's Substack, let me introduce myself really quickly and let me introduce our topic really quickly, and then we'll bring Steve in. And in an odd way, my background and today's topic are intertwined. I'm Matt Robeson. Like I said, I grew up in New York City. Yes, in Manhattan. Let me tell you, it's not as exciting as you might think. I got into knife fights with rats, and I ultimately escaped on the back of a motorcycle driven by Kurt Russell, who was wearing an eye patch at the time. You saw it all in that documentary. But for the purposes of this audience, the real reason I bring up my New York origins is that I actually share them with Cliff Schechter. Some of you are more familiar with Cliff than me. In fact, Cliff and I went to high school together. Fun fact, we ran on the track team together. And then we totally went our separate ways, him into writing and political consulting, and me into working first in economics, followed by about a decade working in Congress and running congressional campaigns. But eventually, our paths crossed again in the political world. And as we both migrated to podcasting and creating videos and writing on Substack, and in fact, I spent a lot of time helping Cliff build the Cliff's Edge YouTube channel and contributing content, which I still do. We began to work together more, and that's why I'm here. The other thing that happened in the course of my journey in politics is I ended up in New Hampshire. I made a career in Congress and in campaigns out of working for congressmen in battleground districts. In 2007, I started working for a guy named Paul Hodes from the 2nd Congressional District of New Hampshire. He was in a tough battleground district, a district that was closely contested between the parties. And we managed to win him re-election in 2008. And then in the wave year of 2010, which was one of the worst years to be running on a profile as a Democratic congressman in a battleground area, we got crushed in a Senate race. So I really learned firsthand how battlegrounds giveth and taketh away. Now, there are two salient things about that for today. One is that along the way, I met some very brilliant New Hampshire people, including political operative Steve Marshand. And we can give you a little bit more background bio on him later for those who don't know him. But trust me, if you're a Democrat working in New Hampshire, you know and are friends with Steve. The other thing is that moving to New Hampshire, living in New Hampshire, which I did for 6 years in a little town called Kentucky, where I owned 5 acres and chickens, and I cleaned up bear poop from my backyard. I learned a lot about the difference between Manhattan and a true battleground area in America. The news that you see as a high information voter, and trust me, if you work in Congress and political campaigns like me, you're definitely a high information voter. And if you're listening to this as a live stream or catching it on video or podcast afterwards, you're a high information voter. Congratulations. That news experience is very different than the news experience for the vast majority of voters. The way you experience politics, the way you see political information, the way it affects your vote is very different if you live in a closely contested state or congressional district. That's why I was really interested to bring in Steve Marshand for this conversation today, because right now, as we see an all-out assault by Donald Trump on everything that makes America, America, democracy, our economy, our allies, Trump's perceived enemies, and his former friends and his current friends, and our legal system, and really everything and everyone that isn't under his thumb, the question that matters is, what is the political effect in the places that will determine the balance of power in the next election? The battleground states, the battleground congressional districts, and the battleground state legislative districts and governor's mansions. Steve Marshand, you are a national expert on those questions, and I'm thrilled to be doing this joint live stream with you. This is fun.
Oh, Matt, what a pleasure to see you. We miss you in New Hampshire. I'm sure the folks of Kentucky miss you as well, and I'm sure the Roosters miss you. But so much that you said there in those first few minutes. And in New Hampshire, we already got 2028 curious presidential wannabes that are finding excuses to get an ice cream in, Northampton, New Hampshire, or Kentucky, New Hampshire. So the game is on already, and 2026 is the stakes are high, and the variables are endless in what should be a pretty competitive state once again.
That's exactly sort of the and this occurred to me, and I will say that we're doing this at an unusual time. So for folks who are joining and are saying like, wait, where's the usual like chat family? Where are the commenters who go by handles like Chipmunk Milk? It's one of my favorite. And you don't like my music. Where are those people? Well, we're in an unusual time and an unusual day. We usually do this Tuesdays at 2. Today, I'm doing this at 1 Eastern with Steve, in part because Cliff has an incredible Substack Live coming up at 2 o'clock with Joyce Vance. That's a fun one. And we're going to talk about all things, he's going to talk about all things legal. So I wanted to stay out of the way of that big Super Bowl and run this conversation now. But this really occurred to me on that Tuesday live stream that I did with Bernie Sanders, former chief of staff, Michaeline Crowell. And we were talking about everything that's gone down in the past week in Los Angeles and what the effect, and not only what the effect of it was, but did it have the ultimate effect of being a Trump trap, of helping to Trump to crab walk his way off of terrible political ground, terrible political news cycles, terrible stories on issues that he absolutely did not want to be dealing with, like, are you in the Jeffrey Epstein files, and onto safer political ground that his own advisors in the White House are giddy about. They see immigration and protests and riots as like home turf for him. So my first question for you, Steve, is how is the LA situation actually playing on the ground in a battleground state and in battleground congressional districts in New Hampshire?
I mean, the caveat to anything now for the rest of this hour is that it's very early on the immigration issue and what's happening in California. And we're still 17 months away from Election Day 2026, which is a lifetime, and a lot can happen. I think it's important to take a step back. And I'm a lifetime Democrat. I'm no fan of Donald Trump. So anything I say here to answer your question that sounds like it is complimenting what Donald Trump is doing is only strictly in the political operative sense of, hate the player, but you can't hate the game sometimes. They got to, like, when something's working, you got to acknowledge that, either so that we can learn from that as Democrats, so that we can counteract it, or in some cases, so we can replicate the strategies that are proving effective with the very voters that Democrats are struggling with right now. So that's the caveat. Here's the thing. Whenever we're talking about a handful of issues that Trump wants us to talk about as a country, it's a positive forum. And immigration is one of those 2 or 3 issues. Crime would be another one, and related civil disobedience, so forth. Anything in that bucket of issues remains Donald Trump's strongest issues, best net favorability. He is more favorable in recent polling. The little bit of polling we have since this stuff really blew up suggests that it's a winner so far political relative to almost any other issue that we would have been talking about otherwise. He knows this. It plays to his core strength, which is it's an attention economy, right? When I was growing up, I was told that everything came down to time and money. Time and money still matters, but there's a third asset that I would put now in an equal tier of importance, and it would be attention, dedicated attention. The average American's attention span has gone down by over 35% in the last 15 years, coinciding with iPhones and other social media and other technologies. We now have, quite literally, the average adult has an attention span of about a goldfish. It's less than 10 seconds. And that means that we have to think about how, if you're a politician, you can manipulate that. And he's manipulating that. We are not talking about Elon Musk. We are not talking about tariffs. We're not talking about prices beginning to increase as the tariffed goods, the unstable environment we're now a couple months in, the stuff that's getting tariffed has hit the shores and is beginning to hit the shelves. So we're seeing increases of 8, 10, 12% in those items now, like that kind of stuff. We're not talking about that this week. We're talking about immigration. And anytime, look, I got 2 young adult daughters. My older daughter is almost 22. She is definitely, oh yeah.
Already?
I know, which is crazy because I look like I'm 30. So, but my hair is 150.
Go on. But
yeah, oh yeah.
People out there, you know where I'm coming from. If you've hit like our vintage, it's like you just have this moment. It's like, wait, your kid is what now?
I know. My younger daughter turned 20 yesterday. My older daughter turns 22 in September. My older daughter,
please continue. Oh gosh, wow.
Oh yeah, it's coming, baby. It's
all right.
She's definitely left of center. She voted for Harris. She's a Democrat. All that stuff. And she's like, Dad, I see on the TV a bunch of young dudes burning a car and waving a Mexican flag, and she's like, it's making me wonder. Whose side am I on in this debate, Dad?
Yeah.
And if people like my daughter are kind of wondering about it, then forget about the folks that are much closer to the center of American politics, the line. This is not a winning issue right now for Democrats. And look, I'm going to be straight up. I do events a couple nights a week in New Hampshire, live events as part of what I do. Thousands of activists so far this year, about 40 events so far this year. And I will say, look, here we go. Repeat after me. Legal immigration is awesome. Illegal immigration. We need to oppose illegal immigration because, and then the activists will go, well, of course we do. And I'm like, but the voters, a big swath of voters think we support illegal immigration. And as long as a voter thinks that, they're like, by definition, you can't support illegal immigration. If you think the laws are not right and they need to be changed, that's a different discussion. If you think the way we're deporting people is wrong, that's a different discussion. But if you begin with voters thinking that Democrats actively, explicitly support the breaking of current law, you're not going to win that argument. You're on the wrong side of a 75-25 argument if that's where we're starting from.
And I want to pick up on that because, we had a comment here, and look, there are sometimes contentious discussions in the chat threads of these live streams, and we're all adults here. We're not afraid of that as long as we kind of keep it all like civil. I think disagreements are great. And here's a comment here that's maybe capturing maybe this is your view, with a little bit of snark, but it's also, I think, a little bit of the perception, right? That Democrats have somehow ended up on the side of, and this is the way the White House sees it, that Democrats have somehow ended up on the side of, we're with the people who are wearing masks, waving Mexican flags, lighting cars on fire. Now, look, there's a lot of nuance to that, right? When there's tear gas in a situation, when there's law enforcement, you might wear a mask to protect yourself. You might, I don't know what the excuse is for waving a Mexican flag. Certainly not a crime, but the optics, let's face it, the optics are politically terrible.
They're
and
terrible.
let me hit you with, and by the way, I will say, just as a programming note, I love getting comments live in the chat. Really welcome that. One of the things we like to do on these live streams is turn it into a little bit more of like radio call-in show vibe for people of a certain age who have adult children now. Like, it's the way it used to be. Like, I love getting
Laura
into
from Akron, you're next.
Yes, that's right. So definitely strongly encourage people to weigh in, and we will try to pop these things up on the screen and address them as we go. But so let me turn that back to you, Steve. I mean, again, when the LA riots happened, and I know I have to be more specific than that because LA is always on fire. When the LA riots happened in 1990, I was in, or was it 89? I was in high school, but I was in New York City. We were experiencing that a very particular way, not just in a news bubble, but through the filter of that kind of an environment, right? Very multiracial, large city, tensions that maybe you don't experience in a place like New Hampshire. How do you think that right now, if people like your daughter are kind of seeing this and having a wait, hold on, what's going on reaction, are you seeing any evidence? You're having current congressional and Senate candidates on your show all the time. How is this hitting the politics in a battleground area? How are they dealing with it? How are the voters dealing with it?
It's not clear to me yet. It's interesting. It's very early in the 2026 cycle still, as they say, not as early as it used to be, I suppose, Yogi Berraism, but it's true. And one of the advantages to having a vibrant, open first congressional district race for the Democratic nomination, which we do. Chris Pappas, the incumbent, is running for U.S. Senate for our viewers who maybe aren't following it to that level. It's going to be a competitive Senate seat, though Democrats are favored at the moment for a variety of reasons.
Jeanne Shaheen is retiring.
And so the first CD, which is basically Manchester, the biggest city in the state, to the seacoast, and then kind of juts up north a little bit. It is, I believe right now it's about a D+2, but it's going to be very competitive. If it's a Democratic year, Democrats will be in pretty good shape to hold the seat.
And when you say, one thing I've learned is not to necessarily presume. So when you say D+2,
yes.
What you mean is an average generic candidate, you'd expect a generic Democrat to win that congressional district on average by 2 points.
Yeah, it performs like about 2 points more Democratic than the country overall.
Yes.
Depending how you measure it. And that means it's competitive, right? Like if you have a really good Republican candidate or a weak Democrat, or it's a bad year to be a Democrat, then the Republican can totally win. But the ballgame starts with the Democrat having a bit of an advantage. And there's a very vibrant field. There's already 3 announced candidates, and there will be there's a 4th who's announced an exploratory committee. There's at least 3 others who are likely going to run, from what they've told me privately. We're probably going to be looking at a field of 6 to 7 Democrats by the end of by the 4th of July, and with a lot of talent. When they start this early, they can learn as much as teach, right? I tell them this is an opportunity to first go to the Democratic monthly committee meetings where the spotlight is not on, and be there asking questions. A lot of candidates assume you have to go there and answer all the questions. It's 17 months before the election. Not all, but virtually every one of these candidates, it's the first time they run for higher office. For a couple of them, it'll be the first time they run for any office. People are the New Hampshire voters are used to having presidential candidates show up in groups of 15 people. And so they'll ask the questions. If you please ask me a question and say, talk to me about immigration. And here's the advice I give to all the Democrats running for office, no matter where. You're going to have that conversation with Democratic activists. Have it, learn, challenge them, push back, say that you're in learning mode. But please understand that the answer you get from the 28 people in the basement of the Pick Your Town Democratic Committee meeting, who are the definition of the highest engagement Democrats you could possibly get, is not going to be representative of the general electorate. And they're not even really representative of the broader, less engaged Democratic Party that is actually somewhat more, well, certainly lower information, but even somewhat more moderate in some of these key issues than the 28 people showing up in the basement in Peterborough, New Hampshire. It's just, it's not better or worse. They're just different people.
Well, that's not only a great point in itself, but it's so reflected. Again, this is why I love popping the questions, the comments, the threads that are going on in the chat up on the screen, right? Which is, you can see even in this conversation that's going on in the chat thread, the diversity of opinion that we have within our big tent. We have the luxury of having a bigger tent. And it cuts a little bit both ways. And it's so easy to get caught in one part of the echo chamber or another. Forget the overall Democratic echo chamber. Speaking of which, I'm going to try a little experiment here. I like to preload video clips that I'm going to throw onto a live chat.
Sure.
I didn't have the opportunity to do that before today's live stream. So I'm going to try live right now to pop a video clip up. I just don't know if this is going to work. But this was what I'm going to try and show you is the reaction last night when Donald Trump showed up at the Kennedy Center. Let's see. So you hear boos,
A little bit of everything.
You hear everything. You hear a split. That is, as you noted, the most recent polling shows that on Trump's overall immigration actions, about a 50-50 split in America. 54% actually do favor Trump's actions on immigration writ large. Tell me, yes, I totally agree with this. Trump does not understand Les Mis. Although, on the other hand, I was today years old when I learned that right-wing Republicans have adopted Les Mis as sort of like their favorite musical. Really? Like I would have gone with Avenue Q, but like, I'm not sure why. That is fascinating to me. So that mixture, like, is that what you're picking up on the ground? Because New Hampshire is famous, if for nothing else, in politics, for its town halls. I have had to put together, I know as a political operative and consultant, you have had to put together about 40 cajillion of these things. I have had to put together so many of these damn things. And so is that what it's like right now? Like is the vibe like that mix of what we saw? And if you give the right answer, I will give our audience a treat with another video clip.
Oh, there you go. I mean, it really depends on the kind of event you're putting together. If you are attracting, and early, again, I stress to these congressional candidates, if early on, it's so early, the only kind of people generally that are going to show up to see, especially one of the lesser known candidates, are going to be hardcore Democrats. And they generally are going to be reflexively anti whatever Trump is doing. That's the first thing, which it's kind of funny because last week when Musk and Trump were having their tussle in real time on Twitter, my first reaction was there's a Tesla dealership about 6 miles from my house that I pass a few times a week. And anytime on Saturday morning, I pass it while doing errands. There'll be, like a dozen people with protesting, like a anti-Musk. And I'm like, all right, I'm sure there's going to be a protest in front of the Tesla dealership this weekend. I just wonder whose base will be doing the protesting. Like if you're anti-Trump and thus anti-Musk, and then Musk craps all over Trump, like last weekend, were you suddenly kind of looking at a Tesla in a different way? I mean, this is where I urge activists to go bigger. One of my big concerns for the Democratic Party at the state and national level is I think in New Hampshire, we have the Republican trifecta: Republican governor, Republican state Senate, Republican state House. Obviously, at the national level, we currently have a Republican similar trifecta: U.S. Senate, U.S. House, and the presidency. I fear that Democrats have become accustomed to sharpening their skills on protesting Republican leadership. And that's a skill. You gotta be able to protest. Absolutely. But let us not forget, there is something much more powerful in the long run than being really good at protesting Republicans in the White House and the governorship. It would be figuring out how to win trifectas, win the presidency, win the governorship. Like, we can't rely on the courts for it. We can't rely on traditional media to change the narrative. That's not how people are consuming their media. We can't rely on Trump making mistakes that will finally sink him politically. What else can the guy do? And he remains, around the same level of popularity. So like, we have to make sure this Saturday when we all go out for, No Kings protests around the country, do that, show the force, show the power. But then the day after, go back. Like, I'm going to be honest with you, Matt. This Saturday, I had an event planned through the Politics of New Hampshire, which is my Substack. I appreciate you putting the stevemarchand.com down there. And I had a live event. We had several hundred RSVPs. It was a ticketed event. And we were going to be doing programming on how to get ahead and winning in 2026. And then after it was set up, the No Kings events blew up. And finally, I was able to read the room, and I'm postponing the event from June 14th until probably early August to get the room and everything. And look, I get it, but we got to make sure that we don't replace opportunities to become better operatives, better volunteers, better candidates to win elections. And instead of doing that, protest how much we dislike Donald Trump. You got to be able to walk and chew gum on this stuff. And eventually it's going to be more important to figure out how to win the elections than to simply complain and protest about what we don't like, as legit as it is, to complain about Trump. Trump's not going to be there forever. What are we going to do to make sure we're winning on the other side of this?
Well, three things. First of all, I want to call out the comment here from "You don't like my music. The left is full of self-righteous jerks like me. Don't let them deter you." I'd like to suggest "You don't like my music," that we have a detente going here, because I've said before, chances are that you're right and I don't like your music because I don't like any music. But I think there's an opportunity in your comment here for us to form a rock band together called the Self-Righteous Jerks. I think it's an excellent name for a rock band, and we should definitely look into that. Number two, for people who are just spooling on, which happens a lot with these live streams, right? Like people spool on for a few minutes, they spool off for a few minutes. I want to make sure to sting the promo again for Cliff Schecter's Substack Live with Joyce Vance coming up at 2:00, which is at Blue Amp. I'll pop this into the comments. Blueamp.co. www.blueamp.co is his Substack. Make sure to catch that. Joyce is the best. She's a multi-time guest on my podcast. She's phenomenal. You know her from MSNBC, and they're going to have, I'm sure, a delightful conversation. And finally, I want to say that you really pointed out the ultimate irony here of you had to cancel a workshop aimed at winning elections because it was getting swamped by interest in a protest. And look, I have views on the value of protesting. I'm kind of like you, like, do it, good. There's an emotional, psychological value to that, but it's maybe necessary, but not sufficient, right? It doesn't actually advance the ball on its own toward defeating you. You view Trump as a fascist, okay, but we're not going to protest our way out of it. Just ask the leaders of the anti-apartheid movement, right? Just ask the leaders of the civil rights movement. It wasn't actually all about protesting. Michaeline Crowell, who was here on Tuesday, was a right-hand woman for John Lewis, the civil rights icon. She was his legislative director. And we talked about this a little bit. I mean, she would say protests are great. They're powerful. They have their place. But it's like a lot of sunlight without a magnifying lens. You ain't starting a fire. And it's the other things you do, the mechanics of winning elections, that give you that magnifying lens.
I will say this, Matt, and you know this from your past. One, there is the emotional resonance. There is also, if you do it right, there is power in the visual. I mean, the power of the visual in my daughter's eyes of seeing a group of young guys on the hood of a burning, in front of a burning car, waving a Mexican flag, was a very negative one from the Democratic perspective of trying to win people like my daughter over. But the visual can also be a strong positive. So if we see on Saturday across the country these huge crowds of thousands of people that are being both peaceful in their protest, but focused, to your point, and determined, and how do I put it? Approachable in their ability to be. I think this is. I'm with these folks there. That kind of thing. Then it's a powerful asset. The trick is, what I don't know, to be honest with you, is I don't know how much information is being collected at these events, obviously voluntarily, from activists, many of whom are going to be pretty new to this sort of thing, to say, hey, would you be interested in giving me your contact information? Because starting later this summer, we're going to be doing some targeted canvassing to communicate with voters for 2026 about X, Y, Z. In other words, can you use this to help as an asset to further build how we win elections and win durable governing majorities, which is what ultimately it's going to be all about. Is if we're just getting majorities in the House because it's a midterm Democratic,
and will people trust it?
Oh, look at this.
Yeah, and will people trust it because they're going to be afraid that like ICE agents are? Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly. Well, you know, and just to your point, I promised a moment ago, and I want to be a man of my word, that I would give everyone a little treat for that first video file going through. I'm gonna share another video file. This is from a month ago.
Okay.
Let's see if this one plays.
Kill that light!
Reminds me of Barack Obama. Don't boo, vote, right? So, and what you're saying is yes and, right?
Yes and, right? Not instead of. Although it turns out this Saturday for me, and we'll be doing the event, and it will be it's like we're going to do it. And what I hope is, as we get closer to the fall of the year before the election, that maybe this is one of the elements that acts as a magnifying glass. That the calendar itself is a form of a magnifying glass, and that focuses all of this energy. We'll see. I think it's our job to, as I said, walk and chew gum and be able to protest. Can we protest in a strategically useful way? Can we embrace new people to the process that then can get plugged in? I look at, from the Bernie Sanders campaign in 2015, 2016, obviously here in New Hampshire, this was a breakthrough moment for Bernie, right? It was his first win in 2016 and really put him on the map as somebody we're going to have to watch the rest of that election against Hillary Clinton. There were so many people that got into the game because of Bernie's campaign, who then I saw later in 16, like they volunteered. I ran for governor and they were volunteers for my campaign. They stayed in the game in 2018. Now, as we're into 2025, I see that dissipating. Some of them have become sort of blended into the broader election. You wouldn't even know when they got in anymore, right? It's been like a decade. Others left. That's fine. But if this moment, if one of its effects is that we see a new injection of activism that now plugs into winning races, well, that's going to be a huge benefit.
I think that's a great segue to shift the conversation a little bit, because as you said at the top, a lot of this is talking about the topic that Donald Trump wants us to talk about.
Yep.
We're not talking about the topic that we want to be talking about, which Pepper captured so well in the chat here. And I'll read it for anyone who's giving half an ear. Apparently they believe we should cut food benefits for children, eliminate Head Start, cuts to Meals on Wheels for seniors, but they can afford $100 million ego-driven birthday parade. Spot on, Pepper. And I would add to that 10.4 million people being booted off of Medicaid. And my question for you is, when we were so rudely interrupted last week by this whole story in LA, we were just having a grand old time watching Elon Musk and Donald Trump sharpen knives for one another, sometimes while they were protruding out the back of the other, and having a big old fight over the big, beautiful bill and all of the things that Pepper was just referring to. What is salient in the battlegrounds? What is breaking through about all of that? Is it the healthcare? Is it the VA cuts? And we had some comments up here on the screen from people who are veterans, who are suffering, who are losing health coverage, losing vital life-saving treatment right now. How is that? Here, I'm going to put one of those right back up on the screen. How is that breaking through in New Hampshire, or is it?
Well, the number one issue, look, the biggest challenge Democrats have right now is that a lot of the issues that the base prioritizes as most important are not currently aligned with the issues that the broader general population would prioritize. As I tell folks, in 2024, the problem that we had was less ideological in nature and more prioritizational in nature. The majority of Americans agreed with us on abortion rights. They just didn't think abortion rights were a top 3 issue in 2024, and base Democrats would be sending out 8 pieces of mail about abortion rights. And then you'd have pro-choice people being like, yeah, I'm with you. What are you doing about the cost of living? What are you doing about immigration? And they saw Republicans as aligning prioritizationally much more directly with the voters that determine this election. However, there is one issue, recent polling confirms this, that is both a top 5 issue for the broad general electorate and where Democrats have the big advantage on trust. There's only one, and it's healthcare. It's healthcare.
Yeah, right.
And so anytime at the state or federal level, the conversation is about the consequences, as some of our viewers here are noting, the consequences of proposed healthcare related cuts, whether it's to veterans, whether it's Medicaid, whether it's threats in the long run to Medicare, whatever it is, Obamacare, like whatever it is. That's a winning issue for Democrats because it's not just pissing off Democrats, independents and Republicans. Josh Hawley, the Missouri senator, seems to have his finger on this better than most Republicans do right now.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
He is like, I will not vote for any budget. I will not vote for this beautiful bill if it has a dime of cuts to Medicaid, he says, because over 40% of my constituents in Missouri are on Medicaid. He's like, our voting bloc, folks, is no longer Wall Street, Bain Capital folks like, Romney and stuff. It is blue collar voters, and blue collar voters are going to get screwed in particular by these proposed cuts in healthcare. And I'm glad he's saying that because anything that'll stop these Medicaid cuts, count me in. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. But also if you're willing to fight Medicaid cuts, you're my friend on that issue. We'll fight together on that issue. And then we'll fight on the other side on the other issues if we have to. But on this one, we got to go all in. It's the one place that is a top tier priority to voters where they give us the big trust advantage. We need to press that button every day, all day.
I couldn't agree more. And it brings me back to something that I've cited recently in my writing. I built a whole Newsweek article around this, around remembering the old 1992 Bill Clinton campaign haiku. Change versus more of the same. The economy, stupid. And don't forget healthcare. And to me, I've been thinking a lot about that formula. I've been thinking so much about that formula. I just did a whole interview with your old friend, State Senator Bert Cohen, on his radio show and podcast on Monday. I put that up. Actually, if you go to the Worth Knowing Substack, I should promote my own Substack here. worthknowing.substack.com. worthknowing.substack.com. I'll say it like 1,000 more times. I put that up there, and it was all about my Newsweek article, which was about Democrats have to become the party of change again. We need to embrace the change mantle. You are, I know, a student of political history. You are a keen observer and hands-in practitioner of politics and political history. And you would probably agree with the following proposition. You go back to 1992, the party that has won the change argument, who best represents making change, with maybe arguably one or two exceptions, has won every election for the last 33 years.
Well,
both midterms and presidential.
I mean, Matt, part of the reason why there are so few times in history where a party has gotten a third term in a row for the presidency is exactly this. The last time, I think this is accurate, the last time that a vice president followed a president was George H.W. Bush in 1988, when Reagan got the 2 terms, and then Bush beat Mike Dukakis in 88 pretty handily for the 3rd Republican term in a row. And I believe before that, you have to go back deep into the 1800s to have the same thing happen. It is because even when people are reasonably happy at the beginning of a new administration, it flips quick. Obama in 08, big win. By 2010, arguably the worst night to be a Democrat, an election night to be a Democrat of since 1994 was the
Yes,
Obama.
I remember it vividly.
Yes, you do.
Yes.
I mean, you were managing an impossible general election environment for a U.S. Senate, an open U.S. Senate race. Impossible.
Yes. It was. I just I was the chief of staff, and me and the other campaign consultants were just like, we are running the absolute worst profile you could be. A male, U.S. congressman who's a Democrat. That was you could have run as, I don't know, Yasser Arafat's personal spokesman, or a roadkill removal technician, or a lawyer. Oh, Paul's also a lawyer. I forgot that part. I mean,
not great.
Literally,
that moment.
It was just the absolute freaking worst. And yes, that was delightful.
So and by the way, and then 2 years later, Obama wins again. So and then we get to 14, a terrible night for Democrats, and then we go to Trump. I mean, as I told my kids the other day, I don't know what it says about the country, but it does affirm your point that in the course of my lifetime, we've gone from, screw it, before my lifetime, we've gone from the Supreme Allied Commander that beat Hitler to a young Brahmin from Massachusetts to an arm-twisting legislator from Texas to the guy Nixon who said, you won't have me to kick around anymore, and then he lost a governor's race, and then he becomes president, and then we go to a peanut farmer from Georgia, and then we go to a former actor from California, and then we go to another Brahmin, but this one is a Republican Brahmin from Connecticut, and then we go to Clinton, and then we go to the kid of the Brahmin from Connecticut, and now we go to a black guy named Barack Hussein Obama, and then we go to Donald Trump. Please keep your arms and legs in the car at all times during the ride. The country is continually careening, never quite satisfied with what they've just selected. Americans are not alone in this way. And then we try to correct it, and we're constantly careening.
Right. We're like the Pentagon. We're always fighting the last war.
We're fighting the last war. And in 2028, I mean, anybody who says they know what's going to happen on the other side of this stuff, we don't know.
Well, I mean, and just to put a bow on that, it takes me back to the haiku. What are the constants over at least the last 3 decades? What are the constants? Change versus more of the same. Change is batting about 900, at least. Maybe 950, right? Almost all of the time. If you are the candidate who represents change, you're going to win. So that's number one. Number two, the economy's stupid. This is why, as we said at the top of the show, Donald Trump's White House aides were off the record to reporters, just overflowing with glee about the past week, because they were on bad economy stories and they got onto better stories. Doesn't matter that they're not great stories. They're still a hell of a lot better. It's a hell of a lot better for Trump. It's much more comfortable ground. It's at least polarizing ground for him. And don't forget healthcare. That is another constant. It's like an echo that keeps reverberating from the Clinton years. It's what it was Hillary Clinton's Waterloo, right? It was Bill Clinton's Waterloo. Yeah. But then it kept coming back. And what you see again and again is what you said. The one issue where Democrats are consistently viewed as more trustworthy, having the best interests of the American people in mind, the one you go to, if your top of mind is healthcare, you want a Democrat behind the wheel. And so
decades.
Over decades. And so I don't think we have to overcomplicate this too much, right? Change. The economy's stupid. And don't forget healthcare. And look, there's a lot more to talk about when it comes to the economy. We don't have to go down that rabbit hole. It is a long rabbit hole. I would just suggest, and I put this right into my Newsweek article. People can check it out. I would just suggest that the simple version of the economy is stupid for Democrats right now. The messaging advice that I would give is it's really hard to answer the question of how do we create jobs. It's a lot easier to answer the question, how do we control costs? How do we keep people's bills down? How do we make life affordable and livable? And because that takes you right back to healthcare, housing, childcare,
cost of living.
The
all
cost
these are cost of living
living
issues, which is still the number one issue.
Still the number one issue. And so
I got to say, Matt, this is something that I'm surprised at how many activists I deal with. And again, I probably said I've organized, I've had events with over 2,000 of them in New Hampshire since the beginning of this calendar year. So although they are a pretty narrow slice of the electorate, it's a big piece of that narrow slice. And I am amazed at how amazed they are when I show them the data on abortion, on childcare, on LGBTQ, on environmental issues, including climate. If you look at it, we have the trust advantage on those issues. The problem is nobody gives a crap right now. They are very low. They're not in the top 8 issues. And so I saw too often in 2024, Democrats talking to people at the doors, and then I would get the data back from them, the qualitative data. And they would say, I don't understand. I talked to this person who's a climate change. They agree. They agree on dignity and rights for LGBTQ. They agree that Trump's a jerk. They agree that democracy is really important. They agree that abortion should be legal. And then they said they're not voting for me. And they're like, because none of your material, none of your mail, none of the ads I saw on the internet, none of the TV ads, none of them talked about the 2 or 3 things I do give a crap about. My stuff is too expensive. My life is too expensive. My groceries, my rent, my mortgage, my gas, my heating oil, certainly up here in northern New England. Across the board, you guys are acting like you don't give a crap about it. So even though I agree with you on issue 7, 9, and 12 on my priority list, that's not my bag right now. And so it's not a question of, in my opinion, of moderating on a bunch of issues because the voters disagreed with us on these issues I've just described, so much as it is making sure that we make the main thing, which is cost of living, making people's everyday lives better. Immigration is a top tier issue for the majority of Americans, and healthcare fits so squarely into that rubric. It's both quality of life and cost of living at the same time. We all have to worry about it. Look, I'm 51. I worry about my healthcare way more than I did 20 years ago. And if any of your viewers are 30 right now, take it from me. If you're not worried about it now, your parents are worried about it. Your uncles and aunts are worried about it. And man, you're going to be really worrying about it too. And probably sooner than you think. It's a top 3, top 4 issue.
I'm going to do a very quick policy one. Very, 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 very quick. And then we'll move on to one final topic.
Sure.
For the end here. The policy one is just, what? The best policy idea that came out of the 2020 cycle. I am a center left Democrat. I'm not exactly in the progressive wing of the party, despite my many friends from that wing, including Michaeline. But the best idea of the 2020 cycle came from Bernie Sanders. It came from Bernie Sanders when he said, what the federal government should do? Wipe out medical debt. Because if you're not 51, like you and me, by the way, and you are 30, you may not be having the same health challenges that you and I are having, but you're a lot more likely to be facing medical debt. And it's the number one thing that causes bankruptcy for people. And it is easily addressable. The average medical debt, $653. That's what's destroying people's credit and giving them so much fear and anxiety. And something that the federal government could take care of right now for such an amazingly low cost. It is astonishing. All right.
That would be wildly more politically popular, frankly, than forgiving student loan debt, if we're being honest.
Forgiving student loan, or even, some people putting in the comment, which I just splashed up, even Medicare for all. This is something that would hit everybody and would be a runaway popular idea. I don't know why we lost sight of it. All right. I want to do a nerd alert, and I'm going to once again experiment with technology and play a little video file to introduce a segment that I call Do the Numbers.
Nerd alert!
It was my understanding that there would be no math.
I don't even know what that means.
No one knows what it means, but it's provocative.
All right, so nerd alert. I would like to get nerdy with you for a second.
Yeah.
Steve Martin, former gubernatorial candidate, current political operative, inside man in the skunk works where all the sausage is made. You were saying earlier that it's an attention economy. It's an attention world. We are in stark competition to get eyeballs and earballs focused on our messages. I am a longtime skeptic, evangelist for the idea that the stuff we think works in political circles doesn't work nearly as well as we like to think it does. There's some evidence that TV ads still work, some, right? But not nearly as much as they used to, and not nearly as much as we would like to sell that they do. There's some evidence that certain forms of political direct mail work. There's some evidence that all kinds of things work. But we're fresh off of a new study showing that the big rage in 2020, handwriting postcards. My mother did this, right? She volunteered. She wrote so many postcards to people in Wisconsin and Ohio. Study from 2024 didn't work. It worked a teeny tiny bit, like 0.16 of a percentage point difference in certain kinds of races. Steve, you're on the ground. You're working with candidates, battleground races, critical races for regaining the balance of power. What's working? I'm not asking you to give away the store to our Republican opponents, but what's working?
Here's what the number one thing. If the swing voter in New Hampshire, but in America right now, is not the high engagement voter who is a Republican, but they don't like Trump, and Liz Cheney showed up an event for Kamala Harris, so maybe I'll go there. That is not what a swing voter is now. They're not looking at the 7-point plan. It's a low engagement voter. Even low engagement Democrats are going towards the Republican Party again because of this prioritizational realignment more than partisan or ideological. And so the question is not, am I voting for the Dem or the Republican? The question is, am I voting or not? That swing voter is more likely to have that fundamental question. And so everything, to get to your question, needs to be seen through the prism of, is this engaging somebody who is not terribly engaged in politics? They may be terribly engaged in other stuff, sports, culture, their work, their family, their community, but not in partisan politics, and in fact are turned off by people who they perceive as almost exotically, weirdly too into politics. They're not watching this one today. But
well, and to drive your point home, so we've got a comment here from Lana Stow. Actually, I'm not worried about the economy, the political crap, talking points, blah, blah, blah. I want to know who's going to stop what's happening right now today, not in a couple of years. And what you're saying, Steve, is that there are different populations here. So there are high information voters, very engaged people, smart people like Lana, who are engaged and thinking about this and how do we stop this? No kings. Let's rise up and fight back. And you've got to talk to those people because that's your core. But you've also got to get through to the kinds of people that are all around you in these swing areas who are not engaged and are
more numerous. Matt, there are more of them. There's just more of them.
And if anything, politics is turning them off.
You're right. In fact, if you go up and you're like, hey, here's my 7-point plan, you should care. They're like, oh, wow. So not only are you weirdly into politics, now you're lecturing me? That's not where it's just quantifiably not working. Here is what works. Anything that gets people, that lower engagement voters, that they trust, the people they trust. And so it really comes down to who do they trust? The data are pretty clear on this. It's their family, it's their friends, it's their teammates on the softball team, the adult men's softball team. It's people that they trust in their everyday life, family and friends, to a lesser extent, coworkers. If those folks are communicating in low pressure ways over a long period of time, what you need is you need the relationship. And once there's an authentic, real friendship relationship, the information will flow actually quite easily through through the relationship. So when I see Democrats going, we need our own Joe Rogan, and that I'm like, Joe Rogan has a relationship with millions of viewers and listeners. That did not happen overnight. That happened over many years. And if you cannot create that overnight, so we have to think of this. Politics are a people business, and it's relationships. So for lower engagement voters, and for the person who, what can we do right now? In a non-strident way, in a non-overtly partisan and political way, the people you love, the people that love you, at the barbecues this summer, at the family birthday party, the high school graduation, don't come in hot on politics. Continue building the relationship, ask them questions, get them talking about what matters to them, and then connect with them on the issues that matter to them. If you earn the trust that comes with the relationship, you'll be surprised. You won't have to sell a politician to them. They will ask you who they should vote for. And when that happens, that's the power.
We are going to have to leave it here because I want to accomplish a handoff in the next 45 seconds. So I want to start by saying thank you very much to Steve Marchand for co-hosting this live stream with me. This is more innovation and technology. This is going out to your Substack, the Cliff's Edge channel. It's a mixture. We're going to keep experimenting with this to bring what we hope is interesting content to people. People can find more of you on the Politics of NH Substack, which is up here. They can find more of me at worthknowing.substack.com, worthknowing.substack.com. And we hope you will continue to dissipate your afternoon, because really, this is the amuse-bouche for the main course that is coming up at 2:00 right now over on Cliff Schecter's Substack. It's Substack only. You can't get it on YouTube. You have to go to his Substack. I'm putting this up on the screen and it's back in the chat so that you could just copy and paste the link in there, or you can go to blueamp.co, not com, because that was owned by someone else. So you have to go to www.blueamp.co in order to sign up for Cliff Substack, and then you can get the live stream with Joyce Vance, a former guest of mine and a really awesome and interesting legal analyst. And with that, we will wrap up. Steve, be good. I will see you back here soon. And thanks to everyone for participating in the chat, for giving all of your great comments, thoughts, ideas. We will see you on my next live stream, which is 2:00 on Tuesdays, regularly scheduled programming. Our next one will be June 17th, 2:00 Eastern time. And thanks very much, everyone. Take care. For people who are still on here, the technology is not letting me end this live stream. It's hilarious. It's literally telling me, it's like, you got to keep performing. Dance for us.
You don't want to be like Bill O'Reilly. We'll do it live.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I promise I'm wearing pants. Like, it's okay for me to stand up here. It's just the technology doesn't want to let me go. This is unbelievable. It will not let me end the live stream. It is absolutely astonishing.
Oh no.
Oh yeah. This is like this is one of those excuses guys like to give. You know, it's like this kind of thing has never happened to me before.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, we're having a malfunction that I'm unfamiliar with. So look, I mean, if people are still on and live and enjoying me trying to tap dance my way out of this live stream, I'm glad you're hanging around. I hope
you must really like it at this point. You're here for the after party.
This is unbelievable. Well, you know what, folks, you're going to get the after party. I literally don't know what to do. I don't know how to end this. I keep clicking end stream and it won't let me. It just will not let me. All right, here's what I'm going to do, folks. This is probably going to screw everything up. I am just going to sign right out. I'm just going to close this and that will end the stream, I hope. So we'll see. All right. See you next time, everyone. Bye-bye.